Welcome to Nintendo Voice Chat for the week of October 27th, 2016. I am your host, Jose Otero, and we've got quite a show for you this week. Joining me once again is Per Schneider.
Hi, Jose.
Brian Altano.
Hi, Per.
And special guest, John Davison.
Hello.
Of Glixel. So, John, tell me tell folks who don't know you, what's your career?
Oh, boy.
You have a lot to talk about.
And that's
here.
all the time we have right now.
We have that long?
we have some time. You've been doing this for a bit.
It all begins in 1992. No, I've been doing this a very long time. Back in the UK, I started when I was a teenager. Ran a bunch of magazines in the UK, including PC Zone, which was Felix Dennis, who ran Maxim, his games magazine.
Yep.
I worked with Charlie Brooker on PC Zone.
Wow.
Okay. Oh, wow.
That was a long time ago when he was just a games journalist. In '98, I moved to the States and I ran EGM, and then Official PlayStation Magazine, and then all of the Ziff Davis games.
Well, welcome home, baby.
Welcome home.
Welcome back. There it is. That was also quite a run. I mean, EGM specifically went through quite a renaissance.
Oh, yeah. In like 99, 2000, we were doing like 400-page issues. And
Jesus, I remember those big fat ones.
Big time
Star Wars one.
Yeah, big time features too, like stuff that like was really maturing. I feel some of the games press for the most part.
Remember the Donkey Kong 64 cover we did with the gorilla hand with the banana?
Yep.
We had to go to a costume store, but the gorilla hand didn't look gorilla-y enough, so we had to paint it.
At your house, you have on the wall, you actually have the Star Wars cover that I really, really liked.
Oh, the Rogue Squadron one.
Yeah, that one was really awesome.
Where it was the top down of the X-Wing with the Rebel symbol behind it. That was great.
So
I still remember the Pokemon issue. You had one that was like, "What's the deal with Pokemon?" And it was this big,
the silver and gold one
yes,
we did?
Yeah. That was a big time. There were several Pokemon covers, but there was one that was just kind of the primer for everything you needed to know about the series, the toys, the big feature, and it was off the hook, like how prepared it was.
Yeah, thank you for making my mailbox fun once a month. Usually it was like, it was that and report cards were the only things that actually came to me was video game magazines and bad grades. So, thank you.
So after One Up, you worked on a site called What They Play.
Yep. So after 10 years and doing all the One Up stuff, and we One Up Yours and the One Up Show and all that stuff, obviously, I had kids and kept going to. You'll know this as the dad that knows video games. When you go into preschool and kindergarten, all the parents are like, "You know about video games?
Yeah.
Tell me about this.
You're the expert.
Can my kid do this?" And it was like, "Oh, there may be a business here." So we started What They Play, which we ran for 2 years, and then you guys bought. And then Per shut it down.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Per.
Terrible. Look, I got that same question always at schools, right? It's like, what is hot coffee, right? Like you're like,
do I need to worry about hot coffee?
And I actually did a thing at my at the middle school in we live in the same area of the San Francisco Bay Area, and I did a session at a middle school where we talked to parents about video games and what's appropriate and what your kids tell you and what the reality is. And like the turnout was great. There were so many people there, and like some brought their sons and they just looked at me like I was ruining everything.
Spill the secret.
And look, I told him, I'm like, look, the way I think about my kids, like each one of them is very, very different, and what they can handle, what they can play is very, very different. But you have to take an interest, and like, that's what They Play was about. It wasn't about saying don't play this game. It was like telling you what's in it.
So at the time, you had Common Sense Media were doing here's all the bad things that your kids are being exposed to, and we were kind of coming at it from. So if your 10-year-old says he wants to play Call of Duty, what do you need to know about it? What's he going to be exposed to? And it was we were doing it in 2007, so it was height of Wii crazy. So we were on the Today Show, we were on Good Morning America, because like video games was so part of the consciousness back then, and iPhone stuff was just starting to take off. I was on the Today Show for like 8 minutes or something. Meredith hugged me at the end of it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
But John, turned out not that many parents would actually seek out that information on their own free will.
They only look for it when the kids are asking about it.
Or on the Today Show, like when it is in mainstream media that they're consuming because of other reasons. They're like, "Oh, I'm glad I knew that," but they will not take the step to research.
So I'm guessing you had a lot of parents buying their kids a Wii and then just assuming that every game on the Wii was like, "Oh, my kid will love this."
Yeah.
But then there was like House of the Dead and Dead Space, and
Killer 7.
Yeah.
No more heroes.
Yeah.
Exactly. yeah. Okay. So then after what they play?
So after that, what they play, what did I do then? I ran GamePro for a little bit.
Okay.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah, we rebooted GamePro. The mission there, so we'd sold what they play, and I wasn't sure what to do next. And IDG were like, "Hey, GamePro is sort of coming to its end. We'd kind of like it to go out with some dignity. Can you come and do that?" I'm like, all right.
So you're like the cleaner, like they call you
this
in.
This is me being the wolf, right? I was like, and they were sort of like, we don't really know what GamePro is, but when it finally dies, we'd kind of like it to have meant something at the end of its life. So
that was that kind of weird era where magazines came back for like a minute, right? Like Best Buy launched a video game magazine. Stores had started making video game magazines again, and it was really nice because I think it was just towards the end of Nintendo Power, which I got like oddly nostalgic for, even though I hadn't subscribed in years. And it was just like, they're coming back. There's going to be a renaissance. Here they are. And then they went away.
No, they're not. Yeah.
But then you did.
I ran GameSpot and Metacritic.
Then you did GameSpot, right?
Yeah.
And now what's
Metacritic was way harder than GameSpot.
Oh, really?
I would get weird calls from people on I remember the one year when I was there, I was getting calls from people complaining about their Metacritic scores on Christmas Day.
Are you kidding?
Are you serious?
Oh
my God.
Why aren't these reviews in our meta thing? I'm like, I don't know. It's Christmas Day. Just chill.
Dude, don't worry.
Don't spend time with the kids.
How often did you have to explain to people that Metacritic is not one man?
Yeah, I mean, it was.
I feel like I tell our audience that once a week.
Yeah.
Or that and Rotten Tomatoes. I'm like, that's not just one guy, right? It's an aggregate.
Well, because you get the Rotten Tomatoes like this way better. It's like,
no. And there was, every company was trying to reverse engineer its formula and like, well, we've cracked it, so we know that we're going to only give the reviews to these people. And I'm like, do whatever you want.
Didn't work.
There's no agenda there.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, and now you're at Glixel.
Yes. So Glixel is working. So the funny thing with Glixel was when I went to EGM back in the late 90s, the kind of shorthand for what we would say we were trying to do is like, imagine if you were making Rolling Stone for video games.
Yeah.
And that was sort of like what we were pushing all the writers to aspire to.
Yeah.
And when I started talking to the Rolling Stone guys, I'd been chatting with them, and I brought this up. Like, hey, this is what I used to tell the writers. And Gus Wenner, who's Jan Wenner's son, who runs the digital division, he's like, oh, I knew that. I'm like, how could you have possibly known that? And it turns out that David Kushner, who's a writer, he writes for the New York Times, he used to write for me on EGM. And when Gus had mentioned me at the Rolling Stone Christmas party or something, he said, oh, yeah, I remember John used to say he wanted to make the Rolling Stone video games. So that was sort of how it all kind of came together at the tail end of last year.
But you're still kind of John Lackland right now. You don't actually have a website.
Not yet.
Right?
Very soon. In the next few weeks, the site will go live. So right now, our content's living on Rolling Stone as we're kind of their video game content. And I mean, and the direction is come at video games the way Rolling Stone comes at pop culture. So it's not reviews and previews. It's more features and interviews and of trying to dig into the story behind something and
or the culture surrounding it.
Yeah, the culture around it and the people and sort of put, reporters that are really going to dig into stuff. It's hard because the video game industry is not used to people asking questions that aren't on the PR checklist, and it can be, we want to talk to this guy about, what motivates him or, what he, how he feels about things when he's having an off day.
Right.
Or, and, you have some we had a great interview with Ken Levine, which, was almost like a therapy session.
Just recently.
Yeah.
I read that. It was fantastic.
And he was really opening up about, how if you're an artistic soul, then you're just by definition, self-doubt is part of what you experience, right?
Yeah.
And he talked about that.
And his quote about, which I think is true for a lot of game developers, of sort of like the best part about game development is making the game, and the worst part is shipping it. Like, if he could just make stuff and finish it and then never show anyone and keep going, I mean, you wouldn't have a business there, but that's if you're going to drill down to the sort of the cathartic core of why we create, that was such a great quote.
And there's insecurity. And, I think we're finally getting to a point where those big names are getting more comfortable having those conversations,
Yeah.
as long as they're not feeling like someone's out to get them. You know?
Yeah.
It's
No, that's
we
part of
saw
it.
that certainly. You know, we cover Hollywood obviously, and we saw that. You know, you can get Spielberg to talk to you about a lot of different things, but it's still very controlled in that you go to an event and, you know, the director is supposed to only talk about the project they're there to promote. And, like, only over time can you actually unlock some of that value, you know, where you can get an actor to talk about the past. And, like, there's stories that are not told. Like, how does David Fincher really feel about Alien 3, right? Like, where you just can't get them to talk about it. And I think there's stories like that in video games where hopefully things will open up
But
a little more.
You really got to shake it. And I love I love what Chris Hardwick does with the Nerdist, where he sits people down for an hour and then slowly ekes it out of them.
Yeah.
And I love Fresh Air, and I mean Fresh Air's Charlie Brooker interview last week was awesome, and it's you got to get people into that place where, but you got to spend a lot of time with them, and it's like, it can't be like, oh, you've got 10 minutes with so and so, and it'll be like, and he's ready for the 5 questions about the game, but it's like, no, I need 15 minutes to get him comfortable, and then we need an hour to actually get there, and that can be tough. But I mean, we're getting there, and I think with Rolling Stone's backing as well, it's like we have that in our back pocket as well. It's like, you know, we're going to promote this on Rolling Stone, and it's, you know, it can go to a different audience, and it can expose particularly the creative process around video games as something, you know, really huge. When we ran that Ken Levine thing, it was in the top 10 stories on Rolling Stone that week.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's awesome.
So it was up there with, you know, stuff about Trump and stuff about you know, Neil Young, and like, and right in the middle was a Ken Levine story, and that was like a nice kind of like, okay, people care.
There's definitely an audience that loves that content. It's just, I think for like the big established video game sites, it's very difficult to kind of sit down and resource that type of content, right? Because there's this kind of insatiable hunger of, tell me if this game is good. And okay, now I bought it. Tell me how to get unstuck and slay the purple dragon, right? Like there's this tremendous hunger for very broad and frequent content. So it's difficult to do that where you kind of pause and spend a lot of time. We Ryan McCaffrey launched this longer interview show that we right now do once a month, which, you know, I think it's awesome. Doesn't perform anywhere near as well as, you know, a lot of other content, but you know, we believe in that. And we're going to keep going.
And
it's like
those guys make. Even.
Yeah. But I think you're so well prepped for kind of the creation of that content within that. It like matches Rolling Stone. It like I'm really excited about it, and like the stuff I've seen in the newsletter so far has been just great.
EGM used to do those features where they would look back on a game that was released recently, right? And they would talk with developers about like what they wanted to do. I always really appreciated those because you have you don't get a lot of candidness out of people working on games, especially leading up to it, and definitely not the month it's released. It's usually like let the game speak for itself, or you get a couple quotes about what they wanted to do. But to be able to look back and be like, oh, we had all these ideas. We had flying gold unicorns at one point, and you could shoot them down with a laser, but the lasers were too hard to make, and the unicorns, we didn't have the rights to them.
And that's honestly the sweet spot. If you get, I mean, when we started Glixel just as a newsletter, the first interview we did was with Neil Druckmann.
Yeah.
And it was like 10 days after Uncharted 4 had come out. And he was like clearly just off the leash, right? It was like, I've been living this thing for like years.
Yep.
I'm just going to unburden myself on all this stuff that pissed me off during the... And I think that seems to be the point where I think the audience is like ready for it because they've played the game and they're like, I'm so hungry for more about this. Tell me, you know, how this worked.
Yeah, and I think our audience, specifically for this show, you don't get a lot of it from Nintendo. They are very like sort of like historically tight-lipped. But every now and then you get a quote from Miyamoto where he's like, Mario 3 was a stage play and all the characters are actors and that's why Bowser and Mario are friends. And you're like, wait, what? And they're like, here's Mario's age. Like it was like 3 months ago.
The thing about having ideas in the bath recently,
right?
Well, and that's what part of this is shaping up to too, though, is that publishers will then use their creatives to put that information out rather than go through like other folks. And you're absolutely right, though. The challenge is too that no one ever wants to put someone out there in front of you unless they have a game that they're promoting, because at that point, you know, those appointments get made and get done. But I really look forward to seeing more from Glixel. And I have to say, I'm very impressed with what you guys are doing. There's a lot to talk about. We've kept you waiting long enough. You want to know what's going on with Nintendo Switch. Brian and I were out. John, you're here for the first time with us as well. Per was here last week, so he's not going to say much during this portion. But
you're here all on your own.
This is a 3-minute video where you saw the concept, you saw multiple use cases and scenarios, and you saw barely a handful of games, which I didn't expect. I thought
or game concepts, right?
Yeah.
Not a single title given, and no confirmation afterwards from the publishers when we asked them.
And if you try, you get. I mean, I'm sure we all had the Bethesda conversation, right?
Immediately.
Mm-hmm. So it's Skyrim, right? Yeah. We are very happy to be partnering with Nintendo on Skyrim.
On this video.
On this video, that is our partnership with Nintendo.
Yeah. And 2K too. We're like, which version of NBA 2K is this? We cannot confirm that is. We're like, well, it's not NBA Live.
Yeah. So it's you, right?
Yeah.
Well, and even at the end of the video, it has that screen where they put up like, okay, copyright Bethesda, Skyrim, whatever. For NBA, it just said NBA properties. That's it. No 2K, no nothing.
Right.
Like, I don't know what this is.
Yeah.
But
those are both those games.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you saw it. Everything folks have been talking about for the last year and a half ended up being true, right?
Yeah.
Portable, home, hybrid.
Yep.
What'd you guys think?
I would say immediately, for everything we did learn, it was kind of cool that they kept the branding and the title such a secret, and the design of the shell and everything like that. It was actually, for something that we'd heard so many rumors about from so many close sources, there was actually a ton of surprises in that short video, which I was kind of delighted by. All in all, I'm incredibly positive on the unit. I feel like it sort of creates as many questions as it does answers. I think for every scenario where they go, well, now you can bring your game anywhere. You go, okay, cool, well, let's go down that rabbit hole, and all of a sudden you start opening up all these different things. What game? Which version? How long is the battery life? Are we going strategically back to physical media forever? Because my 3DS right now is a 32 gig 3DS SD card. It's got maybe 150 games on it. Yeah. It's got every Zelda game that was ever put on a home console outside of Twilight Princess, Skyward Sword, and Wind Waker.
Well, it could fit half of Skyrim. Congrats.
Yes.
Yeah. No, there's some big questions, right?
Yeah.
When you're showing a game like Skyrim, my first question is like, that runs off a hard drive.
Yeah.
Like a big hard drive usually, right? Like how would you pull that off on the go? Yeah.
Right. I mean, so there's a lot of issues there in terms of like, you bring that thing on a plane? Can you plug it in anywhere? How many games can you carry at a time? Am I bringing little cards with me everywhere? Because
like
then
the Vita, where you've got this little satchel full of tiny cards that you drop all over the floor,
which is terrifying, right? Yeah, these $60 coins basically that I'm losing all over the place. Sure. That said, playing Breath of the Wild on an airplane on a flight to New York is a great idea. Like, it's really cool. Pricing's obviously going to be a big issue. Games always have been a big issues with Nintendo. It was good to see a bunch of third parties on board, but I don't really know how that's going to pan out. There were a bunch of third parties on board for the Wii U as well. If this thing's underpowered compared to the other consoles at the time, which by this time next year will be the PS4 Pro and the Xbox Scorpio, you're going to get a lot of downgraded ports, and I think it creates a lot of issues. My whole sort of general consensus is it looks really awesome. I'm really excited for it. It's great to see third parties on board. I'm kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Yeah. How about you?
I mean, when they showed NBA and Skyrim, I first went to battery life and heat. I don't know if you've ever played.
Yeah.
I can't remember what they're called. Raven something. There's a Skyrim-ish thing on iOS, right? Mm-hmm. That's a 3D RPG. Whatever phone you've got, it's almost untouchable because it gets so hot.
I did play that game.
And the battery and your battery lasts about half an hour. Right?
Yeah.
That kind of thing. And I think so. That's going to be an issue.
Yeah.
I think they've since confirmed that it does have a touchscreen, but what was really noticeable in that video is that no one touched the screen ever.
Yeah.
And it was all about clicking the controllers on and off.
Or taking them off.
Taking them off with these tiny, tiny little fiddly things that look really kind of difficult. Mm-hmm. When Nintendo Karen went to the party and was like,
Nintendo Karen?
Yeah. Somebody photoshopped an amiibo of her.
Oh, that's what I saw on someone's desk.
She's a hit.
I was a little worried for that guy.
She's the antisocial one who's playing Mario while our friends are having the cool, all the over 18
party.
People that exclusively play Nintendo Switch.
I did think that was an interesting branding perspective of if maybe this is the first time ever where they're being like, this is is not a kid-safe system. I mean, it is, like, you can play it, but this is not as durable as just taking a 2DS and chucking it in the backseat of a car.
Which is interesting, though, because everyone picked up on that this time around, but I swear that, and I went back and checked, if you watch the Wii U reveal video, there's not a single kid in that one either.
Really?
Yeah, like there's like a family sitting watching a video of a parrot on a television. That's weird in and of itself.
Yeah.
But
that's what I did with the Wii
U. Me too. But yeah, no, it like, I get why those people were in that video. I feel like they're marketing to the kind of audience, even though they wouldn't admit it, they're marketing to the kind of audience that Sony chases, that Microsoft chases, that Apple chases for the most part. And ultimately, like, you could put a kid in there, I agree, but kids, I don't know if it has an effect. Like, I think kids are after the things that an adult thinks is cool, and not the other way around.
Right. Well, and also the kids don't have the $349 that this thing is going to cost you realistically with a game, right?
Like $200 for a 3DS, that didn't stop them from being in like every commercial. For it,
you know? No, that's true. Well, they want the kid to go, Dad, buy it for me, right?
Of course.
But no, I thought it looked very Apple again, like the kind of commercial and how it was presented. But did you, like, when you saw it, did you go, oh, of course that's what it is, or were you surprised, or?
I was expecting it to be big. So I actually thought when there were lots of rumblings, I even remember before the Xbox One was announced, we'd seen the Surface. Do you remember there were rumors that it was going to be an Xbox branded Surface?
Yeah.
There was a point where I thought that Microsoft may have gone this route with Xbox One, where it would have been a game-focused Surface tablet that's in a dock. So I think it's interesting they did that. It's way smaller than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
Like when they're all sitting around pretending to play, professional Splatoon, drawing random arrows and on a thing on the that to me was the sort of most disingenuous part of the video. Where it's like, hey, someone in a marketing meeting said esports enough times that the director just went, oh, okay.
Yep.
Totally. Do they like the John Madden playbook and everything?
But it's like to me it feels my concern for it is it's quite small, and everyone that is the age of the people in that video spends their entire life staring at a screen roughly that size all day already.
Yes.
That is not a Nintendo Switch.
Yeah. Totally.
And I think it not being bigger is possibly going to hold it back.
Yeah, I think that people are already playing games on the go.
Yeah.
And they're doing it on their phones. I mean, I just got an iPhone 7 Plus, which is just one of the most gorgeous toys I've ever had, and it's got 128 gigs on board, and I packed it with as many games as I could, and none of them have button controls, but I'm on an airplane and I'm kind of over it. I can just play. For the first time ever, I brought my 3DS and Vita. I hate even admitting this. I brought both of those systems fully charged, packed with games on a cross-country flight to New York, which I do about a dozen times a year because my family's on the East Coast. And I played my iPhone the entire time. I just played games on there. Yeah. And
were you plugged in? Because whenever I'm on a flight to New York, I play 3DS and watch stuff.
Yeah.
And don't want to use my phone because I need that juice when I arrive. And
I mean,
I'm always kind of careful to not wear down my battery.
Well, I have an external battery if I need it, but also the 7 Plus's battery lasts for like a day and a half through normal use.
Not with 3D games though.
Well, I mean, but hearing rumors that this thing might have a 3-hour battery life is kind of troublesome to me, unless there's a way to expand that. Or
well, you can plug it in an airplane, right? Like presumably there is a way to charge it that's not in the dock.
Yeah.
We haven't seen that, but come on. Of course they have to do it. Otherwise, it loses that kind of portability factor where you can take it upstairs to somebody else's room and plug it in.
Well, sure. And I think Nintendo will design games around that, right?
They're conscious and pretty experience-driven, right? Like, they don't want you to play something and it be a poor or a weird experience, unless it's a title. Like, Hyrule Warriors is one example I can think of in the last 3 years where it was this 3DS game that works on new 3DS, but also works on old 3DS. But it works better on new 3DS because on old 3DS it runs like garbage.
Yeah.
Like, that was the problem that they had. But I feel like in a majority of the first-party stuff, they're very conscious about like how you're gonna play that game and what conditions you're in.
Well, it's also like console gaming is very different now than the version that Nintendo has been kind of nose to the grindstone on for the last 15 years. Like console gaming is an always connected state of play right now. Like Fallout 4 had a 25 gigabyte patch 2 days ago. Star Wars Battlefront is one of my favorite Star Wars games ever. It's something that needs to connect to the internet pretty consistently to work. There's an offline mode, but I mean, like network functionality, network play, all of that is very important for modern gaming. So you can't just drag and drop a console game onto the Switch and then tell somebody to get in a car and play it. It's not going to work that same way.
Or the other way. I mean, like, first question we had in the office is, can I play Pokemon Go on it? And the answer is probably not.
Yeah.
Right?
Because you need to be connected all the time. And that is, I don't see that happening. I'd be surprised if they forged an alliance with, Telecom or someone
Unless
out there.
Unless they do something like
T-Mobile.
Amazon. Remember the early Kindles had that, you got that sort of lifetime 3G connection or whatever baked into the price. But I don't see them doing that.
But they download a couple of K of data, right? Like this is like, let's take Splatoon as a use case, right? You drag and drop Splatoon onto this thing. Can it fit on a 32 gig cart? Yep. Yeah, it can fit. Can you go take it out and play multiplayer? Yeah, you could do direct connect, just like the 3DS did. Will it last more than 2 hours? Hell no. There's no way you will be able to run a 3D intensive game like Splatoon and play Wi-Fi connection or whatever or online with somebody else for longer than like 2 or 2.5 hours. I think that's. I think that could be an issue, but let's also not forget that you're not only playing those games. There will be 2D experiences in other games where suddenly the battery life will be 6 hours. And that's exactly what we see on these little suckers. You play a 3D game on your iPhone, the battery life will be 2 hours. But that's not what you're playing most of the time.
Right. But I think that you get in this, and I think we're kind of drilling down on it now, but you get in this weird scenario where you're like, okay, it plays mobile games, right? But like you said, it doesn't, because you need to be connected to an internet hotspot, which means they'll go out and be like, you can go to Best Buy or Walmart or McDonald's and you can stand in the parking lot and play Splatoon. So it's not going to play mobile games exceptionally well unless you're home and you're connected to some sort of or at the office stable Wi-Fi. Console gaming is going to be kind of an issue because of day one patches and stuff like that. Third parties still to this day will be a problem. And I can tell you that because 57 minutes after this trailer finished airing, Rockstar Games showed a trailer for what will become the best-selling game of this generation, which is Red Dead Redemption 2.
You really like Red Dead.
Yeah.
Well, no, I just
can't wait.
But I don't know if that's coming to the Switch, and if it's not, then why get a Switch over a PS4?
Well,
so,
I mean, let's look at some of the other footage in that trailer, right? We talked about Skyrim and NBA 2K, the one I'm most excited about. Zelda aside, which we've seen, was that short glimpse at Mario. Right? What we saw in that trailer was not a Mario 3D World. I know you're a huge fan. I like that game too, but that is not my favorite series.
Sure.
And it was not new Super Mario Brothers.
Yeah.
It was like Mario 64 or Sunshine or Galaxy, like a
It's that
game
next
with
step you want.
a big world, like seemingly, and that is why I buy that Switch.
Right, but then you're back where you and I and many of us listening to the show have been for over a decade now, where we are diehard Nintendo fans and we will buy all the first-party games and some of the third-party games, but we are not enough to carry a console anymore.
But there may be more of those games, right? Because no longer do you have Nintendo supporting, well, eventually it's supporting 2 platforms at once, right?
Yeah.
We got Mario World on 2 platforms, which meant depending on the person, you might only have seen one of those 2 games. Now you get a device where you'll see both projects,
and
hopefully.
I think it honestly depends on if they've managed to make the product attractive.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the video, for the most part, kind of sold you on this dream of, oh, that's kind of cool. You mean I'm going to be able to take Breath of the Wild with me and play it somewhere else? Part of me is concerned a little bit with that, only because I think that some console games, like especially that game, I would say that if I'm riding Bart and I'm playing that game, I'm going to miss my stop like every day of the week because you get so absorbed in the experience, right? Like mobile games can sometimes do that to you, but I don't think they do that as well. But then
they're
designed for
exactly.
minutes at a time. Right?
Yeah, and
exactly.
and all these like arcadey noises and bells and whistles. Like I don't get as absorbed by that as I do by like, oh man, what's over that next horizon? And then like finding out, oh shit, I missed my stop. But what I do want to say is that I wonder too if there is a category of people who look at something like that. Maybe folks who, they look at like let's just use Red Dead or Breath of the Wild or like open world games as an example, right? These are games that are super intimidating. Why? Because you need a lot of time to play them.
Yeah.
What if you can take them with you?
Yeah, it's true.
Does that alter your perception of like, maybe I will try this one because I actually can squeeze in more time on the way? I don't know if that's going to work. I do worry though that here we are. I thought that the video itself did a decent job of it did a super smart job of explaining the concept in a single sentence.
Yeah.
Right, and just putting
Did
it
you
right
say
out
wow?
there of. Let's not go there. Of what it is and all these use case scenarios. I wasn't on board either with the little like Joy-Con controller like from the side. It just doesn't look ideal. Like I'd rather just keep this to myself than share it. But
I think
whatever.
that's sort of like the kind of thing. It's like, I don't know, like you're on a trip or something.
Yeah.
And you and your brother are in the
Yeah.
backseat of a car, and you have a system there that has two controllers all of a sudden.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think that was the one part of the commercial that was like specifically aimed at kids, even though you
Even
saw
though they didn't put
adults.
kids in it. Yeah, no, I hear you.
Because I
you're
think
right.
that's the kind of thing that like on a road trip to Disney World as a kid, me and my brothers would have gone crazy for something like that.
Well, and
you
the
know?
games they picked to show outside of, I feel like Skyrim. Obviously, Skyrim was there just because, hey, we got Bethesda this
statement.
time,
Yeah.
guys. Yeah, it's a statement.
Yeah.
It's a
But
statement
also,
that we got
it's a
those
statement
guys.
that this is not a machine predominantly for box boy. This is a machine for these big kind of console-like
Yeah.
experiences,
Yeah.
right?
Big style
they sold
games.
that idea.
But then the other games they chose, Breath of the Wild, your E3 Game of Show winner that everyone's drooling over.
Yep.
You had Mario Kart, which is arguably your biggest franchise, like the biggest thing you're selling. If you put that thing on phones, by the way, the world would like self-destruct because everyone would want to play Mario Kart. Then you had Mario, which is your biggest superstar in terms of your label, and then you had Splatoon, which is your biggest new franchise that is absolutely in that video because you want Japan to be happy, and Japan was really happy with Splatoon last time.
And it was
showed
great seeing all that stuff, but then digging into it, you kind of realize a lot of those games outside of Breath of the Wild, which we know what it is already, were existing games that sort of had new hats.
Yep.
Like Splatoon,
Yeah.
I think quite literally just had new hair in it.
Well, at least until they explain what is really.
No, it had a
different
new
about
level
them.
too, but they didn't show it yet, right?
Yeah,
Right.
No,
They
didn't
just
show
gave you a
lot.
little glimpse. And
But-
by the way, we
so-
don't know whether this game comes in a year or.
Well, what does it mean
you know.
then? Like, if I bought Splatoon already? Like, am I buying it
Well,
again?
that's what they got to do, right?
Yeah.
They have to show
Yeah.
you
We
why
don't know.
there's
What
a
crossed
value
my mind
proposition,
from
yeah.
seeing all that stuff is what if this is the first Nintendo system where Virtual Console is part of the strategy on day one instead of a year down the line where they go, hey, you know what, we could put some old stuff to this platform. What if the Nintendo Switch is the first thing from Nintendo where their strategy is, this is the one you can play everything we've ever released on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That I can get behind.
Yeah.
Which I love.
If that is like I can go and play all the old NES and Game Boy games. I mean, the only place where it comes unstuck is anything that requires two screens, right? But who's to say you can't turn it sideways and it simulates
There's
a DS,
other things
you know,
you can
right?
slide it into, like, yeah. who
I mean,
knows?
absolutely. In terms of like DS and 3DS emulation,
Good point,
that's
John.
actually probably the best they've ever been able to do anything like that.
Yeah.
Because turning it sideways and popping off the Joy-Con L and R or whatever you want to call them. Still not used to
Yeah,
that.
I'm not
Eleanor?
a huge fan of the controller name. I can't wait to hear a little more.
But I mean,
Joy-Con.
I've vented on the show for years about how many times I've repurchased virtual console games. But if they told me on day one that like a lot of my Wii U purchases would carry over,
Yeah.
I mean, that's like I love the idea of day one having this tremendous library of games I have access to.
Oh, you
anywhere.
will. You'll just buy them again, Brian.
Yeah, for $1
And in all
each.
fairness, like they were talking some big talk when they started rolling out Nintendo ID. Like just to bring this up because I've been reading a lot of really old investor reports, researching something for a story. But they were talking about how we're going to be an account-based video game provider now,
yeah.
and not a device-based one. Like we want you to have an account, and things are going to attach to it along the way. And they didn't do a good job last time with that. Like you were rebuying Super Nintendo games on your new 3DS, even though you had a Nintendo ID that linked to your Wii U, where you probably own those games.
I mean, they're doing it on the eve of the Switch. They're porting their Wii U console games to Nintendo 3DS. Like Mario Maker and Yoshi's Woolly World are coming to 3DS this year, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of nuts. Like they're basically saying like next year you'll be able to bring console games everywhere, and also this year. Like,
Yeah. No, for sure.
but you'll be rebuying those games. I bought Mario Maker, but I will buy it again on 3DS,
Well,
right?
The last thing I want to put out there about the video, though, is I do think they did the right thing in terms of just establishing what the concept is and getting people excited about it. I mean, as of right before we started recording, like 18.5 million people saw that thing just on Nintendo America's YouTube channel. We're not even talking about Europe, Japan, all the places that are syndicating it or running it.
Anecdotally, I saw all these kind of old school Nintendo fans come out of the woodwork and be like, this is the first Nintendo console that truly has me excited since like the N64 and stuff like that.
But here's my thing. When Apple or Sony or Microsoft runs a hype video before they show you a device, it's followed immediately by someone coming out to set expectations and say, hey guys, now let me tell you more about what just happened. In fact, even today, Apple just showed off their new laptop, their new MacBook Pro.
Yep.
And Phil Schiller's right on stage explaining what it is and why and whatever. It doesn't have to be the same style of presentation, but the point is that someone is there to reel everyone back into reality of what it is. And I worry that they've announced a date for when they're going to start talking about this again, and we're going to talk about it later. It's January 12th. But you're giving people enough time for their expectations to go crazy.
Oh, they already are. I mean,
yeah. And now, a month and a half later, you're going to try to reset them. I worry that can backfire on you.
But
even
I don't.
If the message better be good at that.
Okay, but let's talk about the fallout now. And first of all, like I watched the trailer. I was very excited about it. Like I'm like, yeah, I want this thing. This is cool.
Same.
I'm glad that it is not just an Xbox or a PS4 or a GameCube, right? Like this is the differentiating factor here. And by the way, I'm notorious for playing a game on console, and then when I can play it on 3DS later, I'm like, I remember every minute of this game, but I'm going to play it again because when I'm in travel mode, I'm a different person, right? Like, I will replay Link to the Past just because I can do it on my 3DS. And I think some of that will happen here, where you're like, Mario Kart feels a little different now. This is radical. Like you're sitting in an airplane, right?
No, the rules change when you're up in the sky.
Exactly. No, but
you watch movies you'd never watch. You make food decisions.
So I think the expectations they set though are, hey, this is what the games will look like, and I don't think it's bull. Like the screens were simulated, by the way. Like that was not real. Like that wasn't a photograph
and to
of
be
someone
fair,
playing.
That's how everything is filmed when it's involving a camera.
That's how commercials are.
Off screen for a commercial. That's not how this works.
So like I think the expectations will not be disappointed by the fact that you will get a game that looks as good as that Mario game, and yes, it will run games that you've seen on Wii U on a handheld screen. By the way, when you take something off a 60-inch plasma or what do the kids use now? LEDs and OLEDs and LCDs. You take it down to a small 6 or 7-inch screen.
It'll look awesome.
Freaking awesome.
Yeah.
It'll look gorgeous. And so I think when people actually see this device, they're not going to be disappointed and say like, this is not what I expected. But they will hear about battery life.
That's more what I'm talking about.
And that will be a disappointment.
Yeah, and that's my thing. When you have to talk about battery life, when I have to start worrying, does it get hot when I play it? Like
it will get
all
hot.
Of those questions, like I can't help but wonder between now and January when they finally talk about this, whether it is, because even like the transition was seamless. Like I want to believe that you just slide it in, boop, it's right on your television.
Yeah.
Like it didn't even feel like a wait. And that video didn't have to set those expectations.
They're coming at it in the right. If you think about everyone else that's attempted that little screen to big screen, they've been going the opposite direction, right? It's been Sony with the remote playing to the Vita or to a mobile screen, and it's taking something central and zapping it out, whereas they're going, it's closer to, I'm playing a game on my iPhone and I'm AirPlaying to an Apple TV.
Yep.
Is the closest experience that there is currently, and I think that's the right way to do it. So, do either of you two have kids? We have kids of the same, similar ages.
Yeah. They fight together.
To the death.
Did your kids care?
No, not that much. My daughter is like, ooh, Splatoon, right? Like that. The boys are like, this is pretty cool. And that
was as much as I got out of mine as well.
Yeah.
And
How old?
But there wasn't like the kind of
13
like...
and 11.
Oh, actually, Aki did ask, can we get 2?
Because
because the footage of them playing multiplayer, he's like, awesome score. You know, he already put in a stake. I'm like, absolutely not.
Yeah.
But beyond that, it looks kind of cool. Yeah. I mean, they watched the video and they were, it looks.
Do they have phones?
Yeah.
Do they play games on those phones?
Yeah. So they have iPads and iPhones, and they getting them off a screen at any point is a big challenge, right?
Of course.
I'm kind of thinking we don't need another one.
Of course. I mean, and imagine being that young and distracted and juggling a phone and a Switch with 2 Joy-Con things on the side and all that stuff. Juggling 2 charging cables or however this thing's going to charge, if it's proprietary or not. I mean, this whole thing kind of feels like, and I'm trying to be as positive on it as possible, and I will buy one day one, of course, but it feels like almost too little too late for where the handheld market is going. Like the handheld market is disappearing, much to my chagrin, because I absolutely love handheld gaming and always have. It's what got me into games to begin with. It feels like they're sort of making up for the mistakes that they made with the Wii U and how, I mean, I don't know what you guys did, but I got my Wii U on day one. I plugged it in. I started playing Super Mario Brothers on it, and I walked from my living room to my bedroom, which is 10 and a half feet, and it stopped working. And immediately the dream died. And it was just like, well, that's not gonna happen.
Different dream. I mean,
so
that's not gonna happen.
This will work. Yeah. This will definitely work.
Now, what'll kill the dream is if it dies in less than 3 hours.
Yeah, but it will have a cool factor that you didn't have with the PlayStation and the Xbox, where like these machines launched as one thing, and then they said, ooh, yeah, you can do that too. You can now enter text on this screen, and you can connect your phone and do this and that. And it was never built in. Like everything was like cobbled on, and there were some good experiences, right? Like Ubisoft used the second screen with Assassin's Creed for like some cool stuff, but it wasn't necessary.
Battlefield have done stuff with the maps and stuff, which has worked pretty well.
But what's different here is that there will be a console-like thing on your table, and you play on your credenza, and you're playing a game on your screen, and you grab it and take it, and it'll immediately switch, and it's cool.
Yeah, and I think that's take the controllers off. I thought that was cool. I was like, oh, you just whoop.
I think it'll feel
something else. We're going.
I think it'll feel different. I think, and it won't be the same as with the Wii U, where you're going like, okay, why am I holding this giant tablet?
Why can't I
thing,
leave
right?
the next 20 feet from my television?
That's the other thing. But like, I think the purpose of this thing is so clear when you see it. You're like, that looks cool. What do you? And you take it, and then you leave.
I will say there's tremendous potential for peripherals and attachments for this thing. That even if they were like, I mean, I saw even fan mock-ups of people making.
A bunch floating around today with like a GameCube style
thing. Yeah, I was just gonna say
that
stuff like that's so cool to me. Instead of being like, oh, you want NES controllers or you want Super Nintendo style like clip-ons, we can do all that.
Just to push back a little on what you were talking about with like the part of the too little, too late for where the mobile market is going. I feel like though, it is kind of bold to say, okay, these big console games that you love to play and that you play at home on your television, you can take that with you. I think that's enticing if done right. Like that is really enticing. And what's to say that the mobile market doesn't turn into, okay, well, obviously mobile, I mean, it's huge. Apple's got the best device for that stuff. Even Nintendo is making a game for Apple that's going to blow up. But then on the other side, you have this device that is, these are the big boy games. These are the bigger games that will absorb you more, that you'll get into more, that you can play them on your television, you can play them in bed, or you can play them whatever the heck you want,
Have you ever tried playing some of the big boy games on like an iPad with a controller though? I have KOTOR on my iPad, and I've been meaning to play it forever. It was like a 2 gig download, and I've got the SteelSeries Bluetooth controller. It feels really good, and like there's just something where it doesn't quite feel right.
Well, it doesn't resonate with you as a console because you also check your work email on it, and you check Twitter on it, and you get text on it.
It's constantly like interrupting you.
It's why I'm really into PSVR right now, and I was trying to drill down on why, and I was like, oh, it's the only game console I play where I'm completely undistracted. Yeah. Like when I can play my 3DS at home, my laptop's sitting in front of me, my iPhone is sitting next to me, and my wife's watching TV in the living room, and I'm like, I can look up and see 4 screens right now. So the Switch is sort of enticing in that way, in that I don't get work emails on it. I won't get texts on it. It's sort of like this unfiltered, uninterrupted gameplay thing.
If that's the case, though, why can you take the Joy-Cons off? I mean, like, do you think the Joy-Cons are just there to be a easy travel solution, or is the message, like, to me, like, the message is a little muddled that it can turn into something that is closer to an iPad or an iPhone, right? Like, do you think they will put applications on there that are a little bit more like Netflix streaming or whatever, or do you think it'll be games?
Like, is this going to be like
how many of those do you need? Like
another device that plays Netflix? Do we really need one?
Well, yeah, I mean...
Sorry, I didn't mean to be that guy.
No, but look, if you're taking one device on an airplane, I think you're gonna, like, they're clearly asking you to make the choice between an iPad and this. They're not saying you're not going to bring your phone. You're always going to bring your phone, right?
I mean,
I think their pitch is going to be, this is the extra thing, just like they did with Wii.
Yeah, like the extra thing being the iPad right now.
I have Spotify on my PS4, right? And like, I'm like, what do I need Spotify and another thing for? Oh, because I can set up custom playlists while I'm playing a video game. I can stream music in the background. Like I can put on 90s hip hop and play Battlefront. Like that's awesome.
Fun. Yeah, that's true.
But so it's a good question.
Like,
people
do that.
90s hip hop with Battlefront.
Why not?
That's kind of awesome.
It's peanut butter and pizza. I think a big question, like you said, is the sort of portability of this whole thing, right? Like, is this when I take this thing and I take it on the road and I want to put it in my backpack, right? Do I get a special case for it? One of the things I've always loved about Nintendo handheld designs, at least for the last decade or so, is their clamshell design.
They look after themselves.
Yeah, they take care of themselves. Whereas my Vita needs a little purse and everything like that.
S does this thing for sure.
Yeah, and like I said, when I was just in New York and New Jersey for 5 days. I'm going to go home for Thanksgiving and Christmas and spend time with my family. Every time I always had that thing at the last moment where I'm like, I should throw my PS4 in my backpack. because I want to be able to play console games there. And then I'm like, oh, but then I got to bring a controller or all this other stuff. But having like a console,
and you'll be stopped at the checkpoint.
And it's a whole big problem, right? But like the docking station for this thing, does this have like a Wii U style, Xbox style gigantic power brick? Like, how portable is all of this together as one unit?
That's the rest of the story that they gotta tell.
I don't think they want you to take the docking station.
Oh, why not?
You?
No, I don't think they want you to take the docking station. You're gonna be charging that thing on a plane.
I think
with a
that's
plug.
your. I don't think they're catering to the person who goes to their parents and also needs a docking station there. They can buy another one.
In the commercial, the guy goes to his 2 different incredibly nice condos that he owns. All of us suffer
but he
from
has
that
2
problem.
docking stations. Like
Is that? Oh, I guess that's what it is.
Yeah.
It was different guys, I think.
Right.
But
They
I
just
see
all
your
look the
point.
same.
I just don't think that. I don't think they want you taking that dock out of the house. Like I think, but that leads to another question / concern that they need to answer. Like, how many batteries does this thing have?
Right.
Because you've got a battery in the
1,
screen,
2,
you've got
3.
a battery in the Joy-Con, you got in right,
grip,
in left.
maybe.
Yeah.
The grip has lights on
probably
it,
has
so
its own, battery
it's
that
powered.
needs to be charged.
Yep.
The grip looks enormous.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like it's hideous. I will admit it's hideous, but it's probably one of those things that like you'll hold it and be like, oh, this feels fine, but you never want to look at it.
It,
Yeah.
it, it, it reminds me a little of the Dreamcast controller and how kind of sort of ergonomically wrong it is.
Yeah,
But it works, right?
Yeah, it's like you're holding a big square.
Yeah.
The whole thing that's like, it reminds me of when we first saw the Wii, and it was like, here's this sleek, modern, gorgeous console and this minimalist remote, and everything's white in the background. And then you got the system, and it was like, oh, there's a 20-foot long sensor bar cable that has to be wrapped around something. There's a giant power brick. There's nunchucks that plug into it. You know, there's a pro controller that plugs into it. All of a sudden, you're like, I've got just a big bag of peripherals to play a video game. And so for this thing, if you take that and multiply it by things that need charging, you've got that big block, and then the Joy-Con L and R, and then the screen and the docking
So
station.
now imagine you got your hotel situation where you've got you got your phone plugged in, and you've got and most hotel rooms these days, the number of like available plugs is like 2,
Is
right?
2 tops,
Unless you
yeah.
want to move the bed.
Yeah.
So you're like,
Yeah.
okay, so I'm gonna plug my Switch in not near the bed because I don't need to wake it up in the morning.
Well, you got to
Yep.
unplug the lamp. Everybody
I'm gonna
knows
unplug
you
the
got
lamp,
it. Yeah.
but I'm gonna plug my Joy-Cons into that so they're charging too, and then
Yep.
and it's just like, I mean, how many things are we like chaining together at this point?
You put
I think they thought of
yeah.
it. I think they thought of it. I think the system charges the Joy-Cons
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
When they're attached, it'll charge them.
Yeah,
It's gotta
yeah.
be, right?
But I'm just saying, like, you put that pile of stuff on your bed, and you put your suitcase in the middle, and on the other side is your phone and your phone charger.
Yeah.
And you're like, I'll just take the phone. That's the thing. That's the problem. They're going head to head with, I'll just take my phone. That's the market they're going for
not
right
gonna
now.
play Breath of the Wild, you know? Your phone's
Yeah.
not going to play like this. They're going to use that as their selling point. Like, that's
Do you
what
know,
we're heading into
this is a
now.
walk, but do you know do you know about Asylum Films? Asylum Films is that company that makes really crappy like Transmorphers and like knockoff movies.
Okay.
Day and date, they are available on like Netflix and the Amazon Prime store, and like you could go see Transformers in the movie, or you could just watch Transformers on your TV right now. And when you go to work on Monday, people are like, "You've seen Transformers?" They're like, "Oh, that movie where the robots turn in their cars and they fight." Yeah, I saw it. And you didn't actually see it. You just saw something like it.
Yeah.
Like right now, for years, people have been like, yeah, I don't have Mario on my phone. But, I mean, yeah, you will in 2 months.
Yeah.
But, like, I'll play this other platforming game. I'll play Angry Birds. I'll play something else that's sort of similar. I don't have Zelda,
instead
but...
of Zelda, I'll play Oceanhorn.
Yeah, I'll play Oceanhorn.
Don't get me started on Oceanhorn. I hate that game. Oh, my God. I have opinions. Let's not do that.
Well, that being... it's
that
what
game
I'm,
is derivative to, like, a point that I'm surprised people are not,
Yeah.
like, rioting in the streets. over.
No, I'm...
Because it was well done. It's
Yeah.
competently done.
Well done? Okay,
yeah.
we need to have a talk
Either
after.
way. But it's fine for phones, right? In lieu of not having a legit Zelda there, it's fine for phones. And also my...
It's fine for a house. Like, where
Well,
are you
like
going
my,
with this?
my phone, I can also get a text from a friend, or check Twitter, or check Facebook, or check my work email, or take pictures. Like my camera on my phone is amazing. So it's this all-in-one device, and it's competing with the games only device, which is very enticing in its own way. Like I said before, less distractions. But when it comes to traveling light and being like, I want to bring one of these things, the phone's going to win every single time.
Yeah, and they've got to show you why traveling light is
Yeah.
worth it. I completely agree. And it's funny, you had one more point on the tip of my tongue, but we should probably take a break because I know you have to go soon because you got a hard out. Why don't we do that? Let's take a break. When we come back, let's talk about some of the answers that we have gotten from Nintendo, talk a little bit about their financial stuff, and leave you. This is going to be a long episode, so buckle up. We'll be right back. So Sweet.
Are we kicking Brian out?
No, well, I know he's got a hard out. He told me, so I was like, I don't want to.
Yeah, in 5 minutes.
Okay. You want to stay for the 5, or you just want to go?
If it's not gonna be weird for me to run out in the middle of a segment,
I don't mind.
I'll stick around for a few.
Yeah.
Let's do
Okay.
it.
Then you can have a proper goodbye or death on camera death.
Yeah, we can make it happen.
Yeah.
We can make it happen.
Yeah.
All right.
We'll write it in.
Yep. John, you good?
Yep.
All right. Awesome. Here we go. 5, 4, 3, 2, and welcome back. Jose Otero here with Per Schneider, Brian Altano, John Davison. So we have a couple of answers from Nintendo. They're not answering many questions, clearly, like they just want this video to kind of stand on its own. So what does the dock do? We sent them, and their answer was, the Nintendo Switch dock has been created so it is extremely easy to seamlessly switch between playing games on a TV to transition into a portable mode. Blah, 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 blah. Getting to the one part of the question that I was surprised they answered, dock is not the main console unit of the Nintendo Switch. It is the device itself. If you didn't know that, they were putting that out there. But they did come out and say that the Joy-Con controllers, which can be attached from the side, are included in the box when you buy this thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They made that part clear and nothing else.
But they
we
also
don't know about the dock. We don't know about some of the other stuff.
But they did make it clear that we kind of pontificated about how this kind of dock thing could work before the system was announced, and we said, maybe there is technology in the dock that will boost the output and like upscale. That's not the case.
No.
The dock is a shell, and some people say, why is it so big? Well, it's supposed to securely hold this tablet in there.
Yeah.
You know, it's gonna have some plugs where you can see, like, you know, it's gonna have HDMI. But its main function is to make sure the device gets juice and the video signal goes through an HDMI cable into the TV.
Their exact wording, output to the TV as well as charging.
And so I think, you know, like the one thing we talked about a little bit is like what gaming laptops do, right? When you take a gaming laptop with you, in order to last longer, they will slow the games. Like they will decrease the effects, or they will dim the screen. The 3DS does that too, right? It has a mode to preserve battery. And so when you dock it, the machine's going to get full power. When you take it out, they will do something to maximize battery, and that may have an effect on the actual kind of the fidelity, the audio, maybe the volume it outputs, like a couple of things. But what it isn't is this dock does not boost anything.
We should check it. I mean, it uses a custom Tegra chip made by NVIDIA. We should check an NVIDIA Shield and see what was the difference between having it plugged in or unplugged in, and seeing how it affected the game that was played on.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You have that one for free.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because we did a thing on my other show Up at Noon today, was sort of talking about the consoles that kind of led to the Switch.
Yeah.
Even going back to like the Sega Nomad, which is kind of the first
Remember
time.
that thing?
Yeah. It was like one of the first times you could be like, oh, I can take a console game out of my Genesis, put it in my new fat triangular Game Gear looking thing, and go on the bus. And it worked for the most part. It was a little late in the Genesis life cycle.
How long did those last?
No, that was on batteries, man.
5 minutes.
Yeah, not long.
Sega!
Not long at all. I mean, the Game Gear was like 90 minutes for 6 AA batteries.
Jesus. Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
wow.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a good answer in there. Like I expected the Joy-Cons to be included though.
No, we all did.
But-
I was
but it's
surprised
not
they
gonna have
answered
the-
that part of the question.
They're not going to give you the Pro controller.
No, you're not probably getting the grip. We asked, does it support Amiibo? Obvious question, I know, and there are Amiibo in the video, but Nintendo has certain branding around where your Amiibo touchpoint in, and
NFC?
none of it was there. Yeah, their NFC
They
stuff.
did confirm that it.
Yeah,
will,
they did.
yeah.
They said, absolutely.
But
if
you
the Switch
can't
game
see-
supports Amiibo, then you're going to use it there as well.
But with the Wii U gamepad, when you look at it, there's a little logo where you put them.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah,
but
the
not on-
3DS, no, it's behind
yeah.
the screen. So we're assuming it's
No,
more like
but
that,
on
right?
the hockey puck they put out on the NFC reader, it has
Yeah.
that same symbol. So I was
Right.
like, I don't see that on any of this stuff. Like,
Yeah.
It's going to be on the
supported or
screen,
not.
I'm
But
sure.
it's not on the new 3DS, right? You just put it on the screen.
Right.
and
No,
it's good
yeah,
to
but
go.
the screen, they'll even have that logo show up when you're supposed to touch it for a
Oh,
game.
right.
Yeah, so it's just
Wait.
it's a visual branding that they do.
So that means when you use Amiibo, you got to take it out, put it on the table, put it on the screen, put it back
No,
in. Like
or
the,
it might just scan through the grip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
The grip
Maybe.
might do it. Yeah. I mean, why else have it?
Or actually, because
That's why it's so
one of the
big.
things that surprised me about the base station is why it has that weird toaster look to it, where the
Yeah.
why is there like 1/4 of an inch of the device poking out above the? Maybe it's so that you can just sort of wave.
Oh,
your
yeah, that
Amiibo
could be
around,
too.
You know?
Yeah.
The
True,
toaster,
true.
by the way, which we're going to call forever now because I love that. It's very
Nice work,
odd
John.
how they've gone for like very sleek, minimalist, kind of low key design line for a while now, and this one just says Nintendo Switch, like in
the
huge.
logo is
It's a very
humongous.
huge, loud logo.
And it's sort of like that kind of late 90s, early 2000s, two different tones of dull gray consumer electronics, which is not Nintendo style.
No, not at all. But I think that's sort of in line with console design in general right now. Like you look at the aside from like the white colored ones, which look really cool and dynamic.
Yeah.
The PS4 and the Xbox One are just sort of like blocks. Like the PS4 has that sort of Mayan temple angle on the front of it, but other than that, there's just big gray boxes these days. You know?
I would say, I mean, the One S to me is really elegant. The white Xbox looks beautiful because they have that kind of vent pattern, right? Yeah. So that one looks more like a piece of art.
The Switch to me looks like it's made out of that stuff. Do you remember when Microsoft used to make those like really weird controllers back in the 90s, and it had that vaguely metallic paint on it?
Yeah.
That was there because if you knocked it off the table or whatever, it didn't. Like the Switch looks like it's like been designed and built that way in case you drop it.
Could be. Yeah.
And kids will drop it. And adults will drop it. Absolutely. So I screwed up earlier. I brought up the Joy-Con answer. It's actually part of a different question. We asked, could they be sold separately? Because little Johnny Davison is going to lose
they're going to get lost because
Yeah.
they're tiny.
Yeah, the kids will absolutely lose these controllers.
And the sticks and buttons are in strange places as well. It's like
one is different from the other.
If you're on the one where everything's over on the right-hand side, that's really weird. With the left overhang,
What a weird problem to be like, I can't play Zelda Breath of the Wild because I lost the right joystick.
Oh, wow. You're not going to do that.
So they said that they're included with the system. We'll announce hardware configurations for each region at a later date. We know the date now. It's January 12th. Does Nintendo Switch have a touchscreen or support touchscreen? And they said we have nothing to announce on this topic. However, this morning Eurogamer reports Nintendo Switch screen will be 6.2 inches in size, 720p, and for the first time feature a capacitive multi-touch input. Now, if you have a 3DS, that is not what you currently own. If you have a Wii U, that is not what you have. Those are resistive touchscreens.
And
basically you are pressure. How does that work? There's a difference.
It's almost like a giant. Like
one
if you
supports multi-touch, one does not.
Angle your 3DS or your gamepad screen, and you can see these little dots on there, right? Like you can tell it's a very it's a different technology from when you look at your phone or your iPad.
Right.
I mean we knew this was going to happen.
Of course.
Like we all knew it was going to have touchscreen. Developers
no one touched it in
whispered
the video.
it, but Nintendo purposely didn't put it in the video because either they wanted another thing to announce later, right? They love kind of rolling out pieces and people going like, ooh, we can do that too, right? Or they just want to make sure that you don't go, well, that's just like a Wii U, right? Like they differentiate it.
And we said this is how it was going to go, right? Like this was going to be a marathon of just little bits of information until they finally do what they're doing.
And I think it'll support pinching for the first time. That sounds weird.
They've never had a multi-touch touchscreen before.
You couldn't do pinching, and it will support styli too. Styluses.
I think it would have terrified people if you showed them doing touchscreen games and then putting it in the toaster, because you'd be like, now I can't touch the screen anymore.
That would raise more questions.
Well, here's the thing: if you're trying to do touchscreen and the grip is the way you're going to do it, like. I have a PS4. I love playing games on my PS4, but that pad that they use for touch,
that's useless.
And when I never, like, you're just wandering. You're like trying to find where there's like a mouse cursor.
When it switches into that keyboard mode, and you're like, how do I turn this off?
Oh yeah.
I don't want to use
I mean, in most of the games I'm playing now on PS4, it is a glorified A button. Yeah. Like it is a gigantic clickable button. It has nothing to do with anything else.
And with a Vita had the butt touch, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the one behind that. Like nobody really used that.
They're doing some stuff in PSVR where you like flick something from there onto the screen, which is like, that's kind of novel.
This is gonna sound silly, but I hope to God one of the peripherals for this thing is not another screen that you can put those Joy-Cons on, and then you'll have another screen there that you can touch on. Like, that would be insane.
I'll tell you why.
It's not going to be a thing.
Look, the focus for this device is not touchscreen gaming, but there will be games that require touch. Namely Mario Maker. Mario Maker is going to be on this device. There's just no question about it. Yeah. They want that community to continue. Same story with Mario Kart, Splatoon.
Animal Crossing too is better with
look, when I designed Mario Maker levels, here's what I did. I took my Wii U gamepad and I started drawing, and I never looked at the TV. And the freaking TV was on the entire time. And so, like, you will, with this device, when you're creating, you will take this thing and you will design on the gamepad, and you will be perfectly fine just looking at that. You don't need the dual imagery at that point.
No, and in that scenario it works. It seems weird, but it's the only way that
it makes
sense. Seems can be done.
Yeah. And then, like you and I are big Splatoon players. The other thing I saw in the trailer is like, whoa, hold on, it's Splatoon. Wasn't it Jose who told me you can't play this game without a touchscreen because you got to pick on the map where you jump to?
Yeah.
Right?
We talked about that.
What are they going to do?
That was one of the rules.
What are they going to do?
They're going to make it a touchscreen.
Well, I've got to think as well as the touchscreen, it's got to have some kind of gyroscope in it too, right?
Yeah, we haven't talked about that, and that's the thing that really helped in Splatoon.
Doesn't Zelda need it? Mm-hmm. Yeah, because there's just stuff in Zelda where you're looking around, right?
Yeah, there's motion aiming.
Yeah, but a lot of Zelda was still designed around the analog sticks. Like, you can use it for, like, the motion aiming, for example. Like, when you jump and he goes into slow motion, you can, like, tilt the thing. But you're right. Yeah. Like,
I mean, they ported motion aiming even in a Majora's Mask and Ocarina of Time, like their 3DS ports. Like, motion aiming and the Wind Waker for Wii U.
I think they'll be in, but just to clarify with Splatoon, you will not be able to use the touchscreen because either you got your visuals on the screen and that's not going to display the map, or it's docked and you're not going to use it.
Or they came up with a way to get around how you're supposed to spawn next to teammates. So that was the point.
So
right?
I actually think, when we haven't talked about this yet,
okay, let's go.
There's no D-pad. Right, like you have a little 4-button combo that's like the C buttons, right? But that kind of setup actually for me works for Splatoon, where I go like up means the player that way, right means the player that way.
Yeah, like tie a player to each one.
Yeah, and you could have the little display somewhere that shows the faces of the other players or the initials or something.
But
and
the way
I think that'll work
on Wii U was that you had that map screen down on that screen, so they've got to get around that, right? Because you needed to know if that player was surrounded. I didn't want to spawn on pair if pair had like three
spawn on pair
around him, and that was the point. Thanks.
I think it's very interesting that they've been making dual screen games across the Wii U and their 3DS and DS line for the last 15 years, and now those are kind of coming to an end with this, because you're going to have to play games with the, I don't know what you want to call it, the square with the stuff on the side, whatever.
What,
the
grip?
The Joy-Con.
The Joy-Con grip.
The block or whatever.
Yeah, the block.
The brick.
You're so good at naming things.
The block.
What else we got? Right.
But if you're playing a game on that, you won't have access to a touch screen or a second screen. So yeah, a lot of stuff. It's gonna be weird how all that stuff comes together.
It'll be interesting. I mean, every game that Nintendo has made on the Wii U and the 3DS, you can pull off with a single screen display, and you probably can pull off a lot of them even without touch.
Right.
But I mean, they have some options obviously to work with this device.
Their biggest option will be to tweak it slightly and resell it to you wholly.
There you go.
Yes.
New play control.
Yay.
Yeah.
No, I think they'll do more than that. At least I hope so, because then that's what it's going to turn into. Everyone's saying, "Oh, well, you already made this game on Wii U." Like,
well, it's also everybody listening to this show has played Mario Kart, Splatoon, Mario Maker.
Yeah.
I mean, are you going to buy those again? Maybe.
Yes.
You know? Yes. Yes. Well, then, we're the problem.
You will play them on the go. That makes it a different game.
Yeah.
I think they're going to.
No,
make
but
it
there
better.
will be. I think there will be enough new stuff in there to entice
Look
you.
at the Mario Kart. Like the 2 seconds of Mario Kart you saw, you're switching items all of a sudden. That wasn't the last one. You had characters in it that weren't there before. I'm sure they're going to do more tracks to it.
Yeah. The
whether
item
or not
switch
the
is a big deal.
Whether the gravity thing is the only thing, whether double dash mode is back or a battle mode, which
Then
is the
they'll
thing
add
that
your
you
battle
shed
mode.
all the tears over.
That's
when that game came out.
You went through your whole list right there, and that's the one that you could
saw
hear
a
the
single
you could hear the
tear come
$50 flying out of my pocket right there.
Okay.
We didn't have battle mode last time, but now here it is.
So
and welcome back.
All the details are happening as of yesterday. Nintendo announced all the details for. Sorry, let me find it. Launch lineup, pricing, launch date.
You said they announced all the details, or they announced when they will announce the details?
The announcement to announce the details are
the teaser 12th. For the teaser.
Yeah, they've launched the logo to the countdown clock to the teaser website to the announcement.
Which talk to the woman who knows what's going on.
In Tokyo, but there's also going to be events in US and Europe. It doesn't sound like they're concurrent. They're going to be separate events.
Right.
But the launch is March 2017, which is totally feasible that they can get this thing out. I mean, it's a short. We talked about it. This is going to be a shorter cycle for them. You don't need 9 months to sell a PlayStation.
But that means that the look of the machine's got to be pretty final at this point, right?
Yeah.
Like you gotta to sell a couple million units in the first month. You gotta start making them now, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Foxconn needs a while to stack the boxes.
So if the stuff stuff was well hidden in that trailer. So if it has a camera on the front or the back, it was obscured.
Yeah.
And if it had, there's a lot, and the fact that no one touched the screen, I think, was very much on purpose. It was like, we're focusing on the console-like experience, and that's it. We'll tell you all the rest of it later.
People are theorizing that the SD card might be tucked beneath the kickstand on the back. There's all these sort of like...
It's a Swiss Army knife is what you're saying.
Yeah. It kind of has to be, right? Which is, again, like very different than, say, Apple's design, which doesn't have an SD card slot on it. Apple is systematically removing things from their products rather than adding them.
Yeah, like headphone jacks.
Yeah.
Sorry. I just drew a very quick drawing, but there was whatever that was near the D-pad.
The little hole.
Yeah, what is it? The little hole.
But it was a button. So I actually... the switch hole. Ladies and gentlemen.
I hope you
Davison.
enjoyed that world. All right.
But I actually think
Davison, ladies and gentlemen.
think that thing is unfinished. Like,
You think
that
so?
is so not Nintendo to
What
have
the F
a
is
little
that?
black circle square with no branding or logo on it
Unless
whatsoever.
I don't know. It's too big to be a microphone, right?
Who knows?
Yeah.
We're not even looking at a picture of it. I just drew something in this notebook. And we're all like, what could it be?
In your beautiful illustration, it's too big to be.
But they were clearly not concerned with telling anybody what it is.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
No.
they show A, B, X, Y, and you're like, yeah, I get what this is. They show the
Totally.
chung taking it off, and they explain how the D-pads work.
Yep.
That thing, they just showed you and said, figure it out.
There's a hole in it.
Figure it out.
Well, here's one thing they did tell you, that there are going to be 2 million Nintendo Switch shipments planned for the end of this fiscal year. For them, fiscal year for Nintendo ends in March.
Yeah.
Okay, so
which is when it comes out.
So that means if it came out on March 29, we would say, holy crap, that's a lot of units. If it came out on March 1st, we'd say, that's not as good as some of the previous console launches.
Right.
So that doesn't tell us a lot yet.
Yeah.
Right?
It doesn't tell us a ton.
What was the initial shipment on the Wii U? Wasn't it more than
So
that?
I'm pulling that. I pulled that up. I'm glad you asked. So when I looked it up in a presentation to investors, they said they plan to ship 5.5 million Wii units by the end of that fiscal year. So Wii U came out November. I think it was something like the 18th. I don't quite remember the date right now. But then I was looking at a Bloomberg report, and it said that Nintendo shipped 45 million units of Wii U instead in that period.
In that same period.
Yeah,
but that's
it's
from
weird
November
too,
to March.
The Bloomberg article flops between shipped and sold, and we know like those are very different. I would be surprised if Bloomberg screwed that up.
There's 2 million units in March. They'll sell 2 million units in March.
Yeah, and it's
For
not
sure.
2 million in November,
Yeah.
right? Like 2 million in November and 2 million in March are two different stories completely.
I'm more concerned with May.
And June,
Yeah. Like, where is this?
July, August, September.
We all know who's going to buy this thing when it launches. It's Nintendo fans and hopefully some other people, right? Outliers, people who've been kind of on the fence with Nintendo products for a while. I want to see this thing carry momentum until Christmas and what they can do to keep that enticing and get people who already have a PS4 and an Xbox One. Who,
And I don't think just doing different colors every couple months is going to cut it. Right?
No, not this time. Not this time.
No. Just one more thing as a side note, 3DS hardware unit, apparently they forecast that they were going to ship 4 million. Now, just to remind you, 3DS actually launched in Japan February 26th and then launched in Europe and America in March. It's kind of close to how this Switch rollout is going to be somewhat, but they promised 4 million units there.
And that's a way cheaper
2 more
machine,
days,
though,
like 2 or
right?
3 more
How
days,
much
like
did it ship
earlier.
for? How much did it cost when it
Oh
launched?
no, when it shipped, it was $250. Remember,
Oh, that's
Nintendo
pretty
misread the
expensive.
market with Nintendo 3DS.
Yeah.
Like that was one of that. They had to cut a third of the price. In the next quarter because
And, like,
it did so poorly.
Are we assuming the Switch is $299 or $349, like around that angle, not $249 or $200? No,
Depends how many free Game Boy games do you want when they do the ambassador program 3 months afterwards.
I mean, like,
It's got to be $299 max.
Yeah,
right?
that's
There's no way
the
it can be more
sweet
than
spot.
that.
You can do a SKU that's like $3.99 that has a whole bunch of other stuff for like just truly hardcore
there'll be
Nintendo
bundles,
fans. But it's
the one
I'm
with the
totally
bigger
with you.
SD card or whatever.
Yeah, $2.99 is the absolute max for this thing.
They
$2.49
said,
would
said
be this.
$250. You'd be like,
Yeah.
$250 would be phenomenal.
yeah.
There's no way. There's no way.
Well,
"There's
because
no
I
way
mean,
it's $250.
well, they want
$299?
they historically like to sell their consoles at a profit, right? That's
Yeah.
that's the thing they do. That
Yeah, they already said they're
Remember-
not selling this one at a loss, but they say they're listening to.
We talked to
fans for the
Reggie at
price.
E3, and he was like, we don't do anything anymore where, we don't do what Apple does, right?
Yeah.
They very much come at it as we put technology out that we know we can make money on. We know that it's proven. There's there's nothing experimental really. It's we take other ideas and we refine them. I gotta think, they've got to have learned the lesson. Wii U was universally thought to be too expensive.
Yeah.
They're not going to repeat that.
Still to this day. I mean, if you went and bought a Wii U today, first of all, is everything okay? But it's still like it still hasn't ever gotten that significant price drop that even made it the sort of kind of like this will be my third console type of thing, you know. So
no, totally, and absolutely right. They've misread the market twice with 3DS charging too much, with Wii U charging too much. I don't think you make that mistake again. Just like they're saying, they're not making the launch mistake again.
Right.
Hey, here's three games or 4 games, and then you're not going to see something from us for a couple of months, which is what happened in both cases.
Yeah. Well, there's also the worry that by this time next year they're competing with themselves, and the 2DS is $39.99, and the 3DS is $129.99 or $99.99, and you're sitting there going, portable Nintendo. That sounds great. Oh, this one's a fourth or fifth of the price,
Yeah, but iPhones and iPads coexist, right?
Yeah.
And none of us knew we needed iPads before they existed, right? That was suddenly a third pillar coming into the market, and clearly that's been a big success,
$2DS
right?
now? It's like $80, right?
It's
$80.
You can regularly see them for like 50 on GameStop.
But see, that's why I think there will be a significant price difference. Obviously, there's a performance and screen size difference between these devices. So I'm thinking it's $349 max. It's think about it. It does not have old touchscreen technology like the gamepad and the Wii U. It has a bigger screen. It has a pretty beefy processor, right? There's a lot of stuff that has to be in there. Now, they don't have to pay for hard drive, obviously, and some of that stuff that you'd find in a real console, and that adds a lot of price. But that's not a simple machine to build.
How about this as a scenario? Very un-Nintendo, but it goes back to something that you said during your research. So you can buy a 6-pack of Amazon Fire tablets for $59 each.
Yeah.
And they come in a little carton, right? And it's really cool, but you have an Amazon Prime subscription, and that's how you get them cheap. If they're moving to a services-based model rather than a hardware-based model, again, going back to speculation on what Microsoft was going to do last generation, if you're an Xbox Live member, you get the hardware cheaper. Nintendo could be like, look, you sign up for Nintendo, whatever we're calling
3 years.
it.
Yeah.
3 years, it's yours for $200.
I would gladly pay something like that because I have one of those.
And you have access to everything on Virtual Console.
Yep.
And everything is open to you, and that's how they drive the price down.
Now let's not be too hasty.
I mean, I bought one of those $40. There were 30. One day it was like I think it was like Prime Day. It was like $39.99 for a Kindle Fire, whatever it's called, right? And with that, you have Amazon Prime, and it lets you download any movies that are on Amazon Prime, which means that before I get on a plane. I have that weird tendency where before I get on a plane, I'm like, okay, I need 70 books, 200 movies, 600 games. I don't do any of it.
Just load up on all
I have a glass of wine and take a nap. It lets you download all these movies onto it. And I think again, that's another thing they're competing with, right? Is the $40 tablet market. When they underestimated with the Wii U, they're like, tablet gaming, we're just starting to get into that. And now, you can buy a Kindle for $40. You get garbage Kindle games on it, but still,
Yep.
And that's the Ouya model, right? A very cheap, remember that? Yeah. Very cheap device. Again, this is not cheap.
No.
When you look at that Mario footage, or even think about what Mario Kart looks like right now on a little 720p screen, that's going to be hot.
Yeah. And the stuff they showed looked better. That's the thing that I was surprised I didn't hear more people talking about. Splatoon looked better. Mario Kart looked better. And those games looked great.
The way that the Fire HD can be cheap and have a nice screen and decent amount of RAM is because it's being funded by something else.
Yes.
It's a several $100 device that you're paying for by giving them $90 a year for Amazon Prime.
Absolutely.
And
that's a great point.
Nintendo did already pay us now and you get this add-on content for Mario Kart, right?
Yeah.
They did already kind of pre-sale programs. They certainly are doing it with Runner, right, on iPhone. It's sign up now to be notified. They are getting more into that kind of customer building base, and I think that'd be super smart.
It's not a very Nintendo thing to do.
No. But they're the ones that have. Think about Amazon Prime. They have to make all these deals to offer these movies for free for a certain time period, or music and whatnot. Nintendo sits on a giant dragon hoard of of classic games
I know.
that they own. They can do with it whatever they want. So far, they've sold them to Brian Altano every couple of years.
I mean,
imagine books did this. Imagine the Count of Monte Cristo. If you love that book, it costs more because it is the Count of Monte Cristo. Like I don't think, like I think people would throw a fit over it, but yet somehow in the game space and entertainment,
but Dumas would be.
Now, like, two things real quick. Number one, the PlayStation Plus Games of the Month and Xbox Live Games of the Month articles on IGN are consistently some of the most popular stuff here, right? They just go, here's the games you're getting for free, and it turns in this little console war, and everyone's arguing over who gets what. Because you pay for PlayStation Month Plus by the month or by the year, and every single month you're exposed to a bunch of games that you probably wouldn't have played anyway, but you get for free. And sometimes they're full-fledged console games. Sometimes they're quirky little indie games. Hopefully soon they'll be PSVR. They do Vita, PS3, and stuff like that. Nintendo's experimented with this to the very slightest degree in that every Thursday they update their store with brand new games. But with My Nintendo, when that launched recently, they had basically effectively a loyalty rewards program where you could exchange coins for games. After about 2 months, they completely stopped doing that and instead went with you can exchange coins for percentage discounts on games that you almost certainly already own already. So instead of even being like, you get the Donkey Kong 3
but you're the
NES.
hardcore Nintendo fan, of course that's not going to work.
That is
for
specifically
you. Like,
what that program is designed for, though, right?
It's designed to reward a customer. I agree. But
Yeah.
I do agree that they could do a better job of putting more valuable rewards on there, something that feels like a savings for you because you bought Splatoon or you bought whatever game is on there. But at the same time, I feel like it's kind of a weird program because it's not really intended for you, and yet you're the one who gets hooked by it.
But you're the only one who uses this. The casual user will not go through the trouble of actually checking.
I actually had to be reminded
that
stuff, Nintendo account and My Nintendo exists.
Yeah. I casually check My Nintendo probably once
every... I'll believe it when I see it.
No, seriously, once every 2 or 3 weeks, and I'm frequently reminded, A, Miitomo was a thing that existed, and B, I can get a lemon costume for it. And C, I now have these 3 coin banks that are just literally the actual illustration of them, the animation is that they are overflowing with coins. And Nintendo is going like, these things are spilling out, like, and they're going to expire soon. And I scroll down and I go, okay, cool, I'll spend them. And I can't.
Yeah, because there's nothing you can
It's like having a bunch of currency in a store that has nothing on the shelf. No. So I am worried about like all of that connecting, and I do think that the $349.99 price would be kind of a pain in the ass because you look at the PlayStation 4 Pro is launching in 2 weeks for $399. It's 4K capable. By this time next year, it'll almost certainly be $350 or $299. They'll price drop it. So you're once again you have a Nintendo console that's underpowered compared to the others, going head to head with stuff around the same price range that are going to be 4K capable. I don't know what the Scorpio is going to cost, and I know one of these things is portable and the rest aren't.
I think that's a differentiating point. Like we never sit around and go like, well, the iPad is not as powerful as the Xbox One, therefore I'm not going to buy it, right? Like that's not. I feel like it's different enough for it to get those brownie points that when you see it running on that tiny screen, that stuff's gonna look good.
I know
it's gonna look good,
and it's
but price is important. I agree. Like when one is $300, a PlayStation 4, and this one is $300, people are gonna go, ooh.
Sure. Well, and it's also on Nintendo to make sure to work with companies and not have an inferior port of a big name game on there.
Yeah.
Because if Nintendo Switch is the home of here's where you can play next Skyrim, let's just say, but it doesn't look, sound, or even compare to what you can play on your television.
That's a problem. The
Skyrim
thing was just an extremely cynical, like, hey, we know that the trailer's going out right in the window where I think people are looking at pre-ordering Skyrim Special Edition.
Yep.
So let's put a glimpse of Skyrim on this Nintendo thing.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Like, what about
for
us?
all we know, it's Skyrim Monster Hunter, right?
Yeah.
Where it's just where all you're doing is shooting dragons.
Yeah. It's
I'd play that.
Skyrim crossbow training or whatever. Yeah.
Skyrim crossbow training.
But like you look at, so the Ubisoft logo was there, right? And then Ubisoft is launching Watch Dogs 2 this fall. It's one of those games that you can be played entirely single player, or it's got all these like feelers and hooks in terms of online, always connected multiplayer, but not on the Switch. Right?
Well, you don't know that. Nobody is allowed to announce a product.
No, but I can tell you that the online functionality won't work if I'm on the train, right?
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
So,
but that's true of your 3DS right now.
Well, yeah. So
also of your Xbox or your PlayStation.
Yeah.
And
you have it in your backpack
iPhone,
on the
if you're in the
plane.
tunnel, you're not getting reception. No offense.
No, yeah, of
like,
course.
These are all scenarios where, like, of course, like,
yeah, but I mean,
underwater would be bad.
So, but what I'm saying is that you're asking a customer to make the decision: which version of Watch Dogs 2 do you want?
Right.
Do you want to sacrifice portability for online connectivity and graphics?
Yeah, but you're going to plug it into your
we're
dock.
back into the old Nintendo problem of if you want the balked version of this game, buy the Nintendo version, and then a year later all the third parties bail.
Yes.
But that's the
problem.
But
Yes.
that's I mean I hope they learn something and third parties learn something, that this is not going to be the machine where you play Call of Duty online the same way that you do on the others. Like, it's got to be different. It's got to be the machine that also supports split screen or something, right? Like, I agree with you. That could easily happen again, where we're getting a version of Assassin's Creed that's good enough, but is not the one that's going to wow everybody. And so hopefully, though, we're not getting that. Hopefully, we're getting a different experience. And
but right off the bat, if it doesn't have Red Dead, it doesn't have the best version of Watch Dogs, it doesn't have Call of Duty or the best version of Call of Duty, why purchase it over something else? And then the answer to that is...
I don't think you know enough to make any conclusions yet, though. I think on January 12th, we get a better version of this story, and then we start saying, okay, if these are the games you're launching with, if this is the stuff you have, if these are the third-party games and how they perform, and hopefully at this event they have some third-party games to show, because if it's just Nintendo games, I think they do risk people saying, are we wandering into the same Wii U situation again?
Sure.
But it's totally on them to prove and say more.
I mean, I can make an assumption right now that the Call of Duty that launches next fall across all three of these platforms, hypothetically, will look the worst on the Switch. That's a straight up. That's not even a prediction. That is an absolute.
I think that's a given.
Yeah,
I think you're absolutely right.
So then, right off the bat, next fall, when you have your first true battle for like console real estate space in the homes and mind share of gamers, you have them going, man, but it doesn't have the best version of this, and I want the best version of this, which is why PS4 won the console generation so far, because it had the best looking versions of third party games.
Yeah,
and people went to it.
So, and that's, look, install base is everything with games, and determine how much software they get and how much support they get from third parties. The iPad and the iPhone, you never think that. You never go like, oh, am I going to buy this game for Xbox or for my iPad, right? Like, you don't have to ask that very often because the games are so different, right? And
people make dumbass decisions on their iPad. They'll spend $1,200 on one, and then they won't buy the ad-free version of a game.
Right.
I've seen people in first class playing games with like pop-up ads, and I'm like, you don't have the $1.99 to get rid of the ads? Clearly you do. Like, that drives me nuts.
No, totally.
That's why, yes, I feel like the inclusion of Skyrim, and it does look like it's the special edition because it has the better lighting and the nicer trees, right? Like, that inclusion, I think, was more storytelling, saying, this machine is serious business. It does not do box, boy. It can, but it's not. But it's not a 3DS successor.
When you talk about that, like, have I been obsessing about box?
He looks at you and he says that.
I'm like, what did I do?
Because Jose is the world's biggest box boy and box boy fan, so I figured he'd be really excited about
when
box.
When did that happen? You've been
boy.
on the show, right? Like, what
I was on the 3 episodes in a row where you just talked about box.
No, that's not a thing.
That is.
Sorry, Jesus.
I think you explained you actually did a verbal walkthrough of every level for us of that game.
Yeah. No.
And then I make a second box.
Okay.
And but I think Skyrim was more a statement. And I hear you. I think it could be a problem if that becomes the reality of a game comes out on 3 versions. You're going to get the lesser version of Mafia on this, but it's portable. Like, it's still a cool story that you can take the games with you, but there will be some negativity.
And I love that, right?
And there's another part of the story we don't know, which is, okay, so right now the console industry is going towards iteration on boxes over the lifespan. So, like, you're getting your PS4 Pro, you're getting your Xbox Scorpio, whatever that name's going to be. What's to say Nintendo's not going that route? What's to say in 6 months to a year, you're seeing an improved Switch, better hardware, better tech. And they've done that already. They've done that with new 3DS. They did that with DSi. Like, on a smaller scale, obviously on a portable scale, this is a much more expensive proposition.
The cool thing about that
makes you wonder about it.
Is that hypothetically you just have to sell a new screen. Right? I mean, you have everything else.
It'll be cheaper?
You keep the dock, you keep the controllers, you sell a new screen.
Oh, man.
That's funny.
That's what Apple does, right? They sell you a new screen every 2 years.
But then they change the freaking ports on it, and all the old stuff you had doesn't work.
But it'll be waterproof. But remember, next November, you will get 2 Xbox versions of the same game, and one is going to look better. Right?
I know.
Like, Xbox is going to be more like the PC, where developers will now develop for 2 different SKUs. And so you are already getting a little bit of that story with the standard consoles too. It's like in order to get the best version of Red Dead Redemption, you got to get it for Scorpio. Only $899.95.
Yeah, let's see what people announce at this
I
event
have
too, right?
Yeah, that'll be funny.
Let's see if they bring third parties on stage. Let's see if they show us cool games that are coming out. And I agree.
But it'll be Just Dance and like.
Oh, I hope not. I hope not. If you're listening, I hope not. Oh man.
Just Dance
big in Japan?
But it's not that's not a big selling point for the machine, right? Like Just Dance has been on the other consoles, and you now use an iPhone as your motion tracker with the other machines. That's not going to be the big selling point. I feel like Ubisoft has consistently shown that they do something unique for new consoles, right?
Yeah.
Like we did get Zombie U, love it or hate it, it was a very unique game compared to any other zombie game on the market, right? Like to cycle through these players, like Battlefield 1 does that now, right? Like Ubisoft did that with Zombie U.
I mean, you look at
Rayman, for example.
I've been harping on PSVR a lot because it's the closest we've had to a console launch in quite a few years, and it just happened. And Ubisoft's they're basically right in the launch window. They're making like 4 original games for PSVR that don't really work anywhere else. They support consoles, like, and they'll be ride or die with Nintendo until the wheels fall off of this thing.
You just made me realize something though, and maybe this is not the best argument to make, but I'm going to try. With PSVR, you're getting your virtual reality experience, but you're getting what's considered the lowest of the scale, right? You've got your Vive at the top, you got your Oculus right after, and then you've got PSVR hitting the bottom because of the resolution, the spec, etc. Does that impact why you would use it or why you wouldn't want it?
I mean, for me, it was very specifically in the same. When you asked me the question of why do you play console games over PC games, it's the sort of ease of use.
But it's the convenience. It's the convenience.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be the thing that maybe Switch people will be.
Yeah,
for.
totally.
It's totally about this is convenient for me. I'm going to grab these. But I agree with you. I don't want to see that. If it's the third-party version or the version of Call of Duty that's the most inferior, I think that's a problem. And I think you don't want that reputation. That is not going to help you.
Sure, but like, we talked about this earlier. But the convenience issues of sort of like carrying that pile of peripherals and stuff like that. And I really think storage is going to be an issue in this thing. SD cards that for 256 gigabyte SD cards go for $299 now. That's as much as we are theorizing this console might cost.
Yep.
So I mean, we're also in an era where games are moving away from physical media and more into digital. I think I own 2 physical Wii U, PS4 games, and everything else is digital libraries. I've got this huge garish external hard drive hooked up to my Wii U right now, which we're reading that the Switch might not support potentially, because then what happens? Like you're basically moving one thing to another thing and moving it on the road.
Yeah.
So
just God, don't let me have to screw off a panel to put in an SD card if it takes.
Hey,
SD
SanDisk
cards.
make it 1 terabyte. SD. It's only $899.
it's $899. Sell your car.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's so many unanswered questions about this thing, right? But it was still a really interesting reveal to me, and like it got me excited for a cool looking device like that. But man, now like we need to see the next trailer, which is, and here are the games and what they're going to be like, because that will answer a ton of questions, I think.
No, totally.
January.
On top of everything that they're going to say in January. All right, there was a few other things, but I feel like we've gone on long enough. Nintendo reported their financials. Apparently, the only reason the company was profitable was because of some residual money from Pokemon Go, but also selling the Mariners, selling majority stake, because the yen basically strengthened against the dollar. And whenever that happens, because Nintendo's money, 2/3 of it comes from overseas.
They made quite a bit out of Pokemon Go, considering they did nothing.
They're even selling a peripheral that you can't find, and they apologize.
They did put out a press release saying they didn't make it.
Yes.
So that was a lot of work.
Guys, all they have to do every year is not make a game and put their name on it and sell a baseball team, and we're going to be fine. This will be good to go.
Well, and that's why investors just want them to make mobile games.
Yeah,
and that's been the story on all the financial trade. It's like investors want you to go mobile. Just go mobile. Forget this.
And they are going to clean up once they do.
Switch got announced, and their stock price declined.
It dropped like 5%, right?
Yeah.
Strange times.
Strange times, but to me, exciting times.
Yeah,
I'm always happy when a machine is different. And like that's why I like PSVR, and honestly, I'm so glad there isn't a Microsoft VR headset.
Me too.
Like I don't want to get into this and now you have the Xbox VR. Like no, like I love it when these machines are different, when not all of them have a Kinect or motion controls. Like when everything becomes the same, my house just fills up with crap that I don't use a year later.
And then you find somewhere to put it afterwards.
Yeah.
Do you need some steering wheels, John?
I will
Rock Band instruments.
I will always love and appreciate weird Nintendo. The fact that they are just like, we're going to go diagonal on this one. You expected us to do just another box.
Yeah.
With the crazy controllers.
Exactly. There was in one of the IGN podcast groups, I think it was the Podcast Beyond group, somebody was just like, I wish they would just make a normal console again. And I was like, they never have.
Yeah.
Here's why. I was like, they launched the NES as a toy. They Trojan horsed it with a robot and a light gun and a dance pad so you could race people and shoot clay ducks. Like they never made a normal thing. Like, it's always been pretty weird. Even the Super Nintendo had a mouse pad peripheral. Like, they've been making weird stuff forever, and I appreciate them for that, and I hope that never changes.
No, same, yeah. Well, it feels like we've run out of steam finally, so that's good. Thank you for listening to Nintendo Voice Chat, and thank you for joining us, John Davison.
Pleasure.
Yeah. So where can folks find you? Give them all the places.
Oh my God. So we'll be launching soon on Glixel.com. That's Glixel.
What is a Glixel, John?
It's
It's
a
thing?
Glixel.
If you don't know.
It's a brand that was available to trademark.
A
So
glamorous
how many different names did you go through for your Glixel?
When I came on board, the name was already decided.
Oh, got it. Okay.
So, yeah.
How convenient, John.
So I didn't have to sit in those endless branding meetings that people have. So we're Glixel on Twitter and on Instagram. We're Glixel Official on Facebook. And I'm JWH Davison on Twitter.
Nice. All right. If you like listening to Nintendo Voice Chat, make sure you send us feedback. Email us at nvc@ign.com. Or leave us a review on iTunes, which I usually read one, but we went on for long enough, I think. You can find Brian on Twitter at
Agent Bizzle.
You can find Per Schneider at
PRIGN.
And you can find myself, Jose_Otero. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll be back next week with more Nintendo Voice Chat.
Bye.
Bye.